If you didn't watch the original Toonami, then all I can say is, I feel sorry for you.
We won't be intimidated by criminal threats.
Every Saturday night, Cartoon Network's building you a better cartoon show. We call it Toonami.
I am Gene Starwing, an outlaw not in the habit of listening to warnings.
Only Toonami.
If you want to understand the story of Toonami, you first need to go back to the era it was born in. It was in 1992 that we would see the debut of the first ever channel dedicated entirely to cartoon programming. That channel was Cartoon Network. Now, Cartoon Network in the early 90s was nothing like the modern day Cartoon Network most people are probably familiar with. You know, stuff like Adventure Time, regular shows, Steven Universe. None of that existed back then, and obviously you don't need me to tell you that. However, what's very interesting is that the channel actually didn't have any original programming whatsoever. It was made up entirely of reruns from much older cartoons, a lot of which came from the 60s with stuff like Looney Tunes and old Hanna-Barbera cartoons like the Flintstones. Though I can assure you the Flintstones definitely weren't smoking cigarettes this time around.
Winston tastes good, like a cigarette should.
What the fuck? Despite the unoriginal, and to be perfectly honest, dated programming, the channel would steadily grow into the mid-90s. Eventually, even being able to release original content like What a Cartoon and the now beloved Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
How's Chewie?
Chewie? Well, you know,
You and me both.
That being said, Cartoon Network producer Mike Lazo was looking for ways to make Cartoon Network stand out from its competition. So with this in mind, Lazo would hire two men, whose job it was to create a new after-school action programming block. These two men were Sean Akins and Jason DeMarco. And that new action programming block? It would be named Toonami, a portmanteau of the words cartoon and tsunami, with the idea being that the viewer would be overwhelmed with the tsunami of action cartoons.
I came up with the Toonami name, I'm proud to say. It was one of a list of about 40 that Mike Lazo and Rob Sorcher looked at. They liked Toonami, so there you go.
Though I have to admit, Toonami wasn't so much a tsunami in its early years as much as it was, you know, kind of a little puddle. The block aired in 1997 with the following shows: Thundercats, The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, Voltron, and Cartoon Roulette, a series of cut-up shorts from old action cartoons like Space Ghost, Birdman, and Superman. Toonami really didn't stand out that much in the early days. I mean, after all, several of its shows had already been seen 100 times at this point. Not only because they were old, but many of them had been on Cartoon Network already in older action blocks like Super Adventures and Power Zone.
In the beginning, it wasn't glamorous. There was literally no money to do anything.
Toonami desperately needed a solution to help it stand out, and DeMarco and Akins would find the solution in one of their favorite hobbies. That hobby being anime. Despite the fact that anime was incredibly niche in the US at this point, these two had made it a priority to get their hands on any anime that they could. From Akira to Vampire Hunter D. Now, past Cartoon Network action blocks and even Toonami at this point had aired anime like Speed Racer and Voltron. However, these were all shows that the American public had already seen numerous times, and many people weren't even aware that they were anime. They came from a time when there really wasn't that much of a distinction. Toonami would need a different lineup of anime, something that the American public wasn't used to, something a bit different and a bit edgier.
Lazo was sort of like, I don't get anime, but I know you do, and you want to show this and build a thing around it. What would you do if I let you have a teeny bit of money? And so we had someone who let us take this risk.
And thus, Akins and DeMarco would begin getting the rights to a few different anime they could air on Toonami. Stuff like Robotech and Sailor Moon. And these shows, especially Sailor Moon, were very well received. However, there was one show that Akins was adamant about getting the rights to. That anime was Dragon Ball Z.
What does the scouter say about his power level? It's over 9,000! What, 9,000? There's no way that can be right.
Dragon Ball Z, while it hadn't debuted in the US on Toonami, was still relatively new, and it, along with the previously mentioned Sailor Moon, would cause Toonami to kick off an entire revolution.
The way we discovered that people were really interested, besides ratings, was that people started calling us to try and write about it. You know, writers from places like the Wall Street Journal, who never had even thought about talking about anime before, were reaching out to say, what is this thing you're selling?
In no time at all, shows like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon would become television sensations, and thus had proved DeMarco and Aiken's hunch completely right. Anime was the way to go, and so after this, Toonami would make it a point to procure more and more anime for its block. Gundam Wing, Tenchi Muyo, Outlaw Star, all of which would become synonymous with Toonami. And with all of these new shows came a big makeover. Of course, anime played a huge part in helping Toonami stand out. However, we also have to give credit to the other big element that would solidify Toonami in the minds of fans for years: its incredible presentation. Now, in the early years, Toonami was hosted by a character named Moltar, one of the villains from the original Space Ghost, as well as a recurring character on the newer Space Ghost Coast to Coast. And this was fine, you know. However, it wasn't until 1999, 2 years after Toonami had debuted, it would get a brand new host. A host that would make Toonami not just a simple television block, but an entire experience. And that host was T.O.M. T.O.M, short for Toonami Operations Module, was a cool robot guy who flew around in space on his ship the Absolution with his AI companion Sarah. Now, of course, that's insanely cool, but what really made T.O.M stand out was that he brought something that was incredibly rare for TV blocks at the time. He brought a sense of narrative to the commercial breaks themselves. He wasn't just a robot guy who flipped buttons to turn on your favorite anime. He was a completely original character with his own feelings and opinions. He would regularly give his thoughts on the shows as they aired, and there was something very real about the way he expressed those thoughts. For example, when Toonami got the rights to air Hamtaro, I remember him being so confused as to why they were airing something like this on Toonami.
Oh, chicka, 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 when you're in the jam. Remember I'm your ham.
What's going on here?
Oh, cushy, 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 remember I'm your...
Well, they are kind of cute.
T.O.M, unlike Moltar, was also a character that over the course of Toonami's run would actually change and evolve. He started out as a silly little round guy, but eventually he would be upgraded several times. The first of which would happen during these cool cinematic shorts that you'd have to catch during the commercial breaks to get the full story. Not only was Toonami showing all this cool new anime to fans, but it was weaving its own narrative. It was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. But unfortunately, Toonami wouldn't last forever. On September 20th, 2008, Toonami would be canceled. And there were a number of reasons for this. For one, the mid-2000s anime bubble was finally bursting. I won't go into a ton of detail here, but if you're interested, you can learn more from this video. But basically, due to a number of factors, anime DVDs were being heavily impacted during this time, which had heavy repercussions for the anime that was airing on Toonami. Along with this, Toonami had gone through a few bizarre changes. The most apparent being T.O.M himself, who went from this cool, edgy 90s robot guy to this kinda more softer Pixar-esque appearance. I mean, in general, Toonami's ratings were diminishing. And this, combined with a shift in Cartoon Network's management, meant the channel was beginning to prioritize other things, such as See in Real, a block dedicated entirely to live-action programming, airing shows like Destroy, Build, Destroy, Brain Rush, and Dude, What Would Happen? Oh, what's that you're saying? You're saying you've never heard of any of these shows before? Yeah, that's because they all sucked and it was an awful idea. This was quite frankly shocking for a network that was born as the first ever channel dedicated entirely to cartoons. But regardless, Toonami was finished, and T.O.M would give all the fans one final farewell.
Well, this is the end, beautiful friends. After more than 11 years, this is Toonami's final broadcast. It's been a lot of fun, and we'd like to thank each and every one of you who've made this journey with us. Toonami wouldn't have been anything without you. Hopefully, we've left you with some good memories. So, until we meet again, stay gold. Bang.
Toonami would linger in the minds of fans for years, who would all cherish those memories of coming home from school, dropping their backpacks on the floor, and watching their favorite anime. It was more than just TV. It was a revolution that so many people were a part of. A revolution whose flame refused to go out permanently. So Adult Swim has this tradition. Every April Fool's, the channel will broadcast its programming with some kind of silly joke thrown in, whether it be drawing funny mustaches over the characters or adding fart noises to Full Metal Alchemist.
Sorry, Kane, I know you're healing, but I just needed to talk. So much has happened and I'm confused.
As a side note, imagine if you just saw this on TV and had no idea it was April Fool's, and you just assumed Full Metal Alchemist was like this. Anyway, in 2012, April Fool's just so happened to land on Adult Swim's Anime Night, and anime fans would be treated to something very, very special.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Oh, hi, Adult Swim. I got the results of the test back. I definitely have April Fools.
People were shocked. I remember my brother texting me about this. For nearly 6 hours straight, Adult Swim would air classic Toonami anime with all the Toonami bumpers intact. It was absolutely insane. Tom was back. Not the weird Tom from when Toonami ended, but the old Tom that everyone knew and loved. And this would cause people to clamor for the revival of Toonami. And Adult Swim would give the fans exactly what they wanted. On May 26th, 2012, Toonami would be resurrected as Adult Swim's late night anime block. And since then, it has been airing every Saturday night, showing old classics like Naruto and Dragon Ball Z, in addition to newer contemporary anime like Attack on Titan and My Hero Academia. At this point, Toonami has been running for over a decade on Adult Swim, which is incredible. And on top of that, not only does Toonami air newer anime, but the creators get involved in producing new anime for the block. Granted, it doesn't always work out, looking at you, Uzumaki, but it just goes to show that the people behind Toonami really do care. However, unfortunately, in this day and age, there's no guarantee that passion can keep it afloat. As streaming continues to consume the ways we watch our content, I have to be real here, I don't see Toonami sticking around in the future. The fact that it's been able to hold on for this long, not only airing anime, but helping to get new anime made, well, honestly, it's nothing short of a miracle. But I think that's also a testament to how beloved Toonami is. People don't watch Toonami just to watch anime. They watch it for the experience. And while I'm personally someone who has fully moved on to streaming, like most of you, I can probably assume, I can't say that I don't miss that experience. So while my gut tells me that Toonami probably won't be around within the next decade, that's never going to change the fact that Toonami has changed mine and so many people's lives. It was one of the single most important driving forces for making anime mainstream in the US. And it's for that reason, whether it exists or not, Toonami has carved a place for itself in anime history.